true, scary, paranormal story number 1, The Horseman.
This true paranormal story was told by my grandmother to me many years ago. The story takes place in Corpus Christi, Texas, out in the country. This was around the time that my grandmother was a teenager, most likely around 15 or 16 years old. She lived in the country in a one-story old house. It was on a couple of acres. She lived with her 4 siblings and mother and father. My grandmother and her siblings slept in the living room, as their home was only a 1-bedroom house. She said that they would hear noises in the middle of the night, all around the outside of their house. This usually occurred between the hours of 1 in the morning to 4 in the morning. She said it sounded as if there were horses galloping all around the house. They would also hear screaming coming from outside, and at one point, giggling sounds came from right outside their window. Sometimes they would peek outside to see nothing at all. When they would have to use the restroom, they would have to go outside because they didn't have a bathroom in the home. Most of the time, they would try to hold it because they were terrified to go outside alone. One time, my grandmother had no choice and went outside in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. She tried to hurry up and quickly get back in the house as fast as possible. As she was about to leave the outhouse, she said she heard something on 2 feet running in circles around the outhouse that she was in. It was breathing heavily, and it was running at an inhuman speed. She leaned against the door and prayed to God to protect her from whatever was outside. As soon as the noises stopped, she bolted to the house. At the time, they did not own any horses or large farm animals, just small chickens, dogs, and cats. So there was no explanation for the loud sounds they encountered outside their home. She would tell her parents about the paranormal occurrences, but they insisted that she had a nightmare or that maybe she was just imagining it. But everything changed one winter night when it was extremely cold outside. This was around the 1930s, so they didn't have electricity in every room. They had a fireplace in the living room to warm them up at night when it would get extremely cold. She said this one night they decided to go to bed kind of early, and they put out the fire that was illuminating the living room. It became pitch dark, and they eventually fell to sleep. All of a sudden, they were woken up around 2 in the morning by the sound of horses galloping around their house. But this time, they also heard men talking. She said it sounded like soldiers walking past their house. The sounds of metal objects clanking together also can be heard. They opened the window to look out of it, but saw nothing. She said her sisters began to cry, and she tried her best to comfort them. She was afraid to wake up her father, knowing that he would get extremely upset. Eventually, the sound stopped, and they were able to fall back to sleep. But not even 30 minutes later, they were awoken by the sound of a horse galloping inside the living room where they were sleeping. She looked up and was able to see the silhouette of a man on top of the horse as it was stomping all over the wooden floors. They all began screaming. That's when her father and mother woke up and went to the living room, and what they saw shocked them to the core. When they saw this, they also began to scream and began praying out loud, hoping it would stop. After about 20 seconds, the apparition disappeared with the sounds. Smaller paranormal occurrences began to plague the family for a couple of months, until one day they were remodeling the patio of their home, and they uncovered a book with a voodoo-like doll. There was a paper and some crystals in a small bag. When they saw this, they got terrified, knowing that this was something evil. After throwing it away and getting their home blessed more than one time, the paranormal occurrences finally ceased. My grandmother has since passed away in 2002, but I will never forget the story she told me, as these things rarely happen these days.
Scary Paranormal True Story Number 2. The Haunted Book.
I write stories, especially horror and paranormal true stories, and I usually don't get much views on them. I was running out of stories and ideas. So one day I went to the library to look up any kind of horror stories I could find, and maybe I could choose the scariest ones, just to be able to write about it. Then maybe I might get some kind of views. Once in the library, I made my way into the nonfiction scary section. I grabbed a bunch of old books on cryptids, UFOs, and other paranormal sightings. I was hoping that something there at the library would ignite my imagination. As I was in one of the aisles looking through the books, I heard a book fall to the ground behind me, which made me turn around. An old-looking book had fallen off the shelf onto the wooden floor. I felt that I had to put it back, so I placed my stack of books on the side and bent down to pick up the book from the floor. But as soon as I touched the book, I was flooded with emotions, like a cold shower running over me. I was happy, sad, scared, and angry all at the same time. I stood up slowly, soaked in sweat from the emotional rush, and turned the book over in my hand. It was a hardback book. It was brown in color and looked to be really old. The cover looked and felt like leather, but was lumpy, not smooth, and had randomly stitched ridges running through it. It was heavier than it looked, and I could smell a musty odor that I couldn't quite label. I should have put it back then, or I should have put it back on the floor and walked away. But I didn't. Flipping the book from front to back, I noticed there were no book titles or authors mentioned on it, nor was there the normal book details. There wasn't even a library barcode attached to the spine. I opened the book and slowly thumbed through the first few pages. Its pages were yellowed and darkened, likely because of its age. The paper felt thick, and the texture was rougher than the newer books. The ink was a little faded and smudged, and was a dark red color. There was no book name or author details on the first few pages, but the third page had an image on it that made the hairs on my neck stand up, and my heart skip a beat. Spread across the 2 pages, drawn in dark red and black ink, was the most terrifying demon-like creature I had ever seen. Its face was depicted to have exposed muscle with little overworldly tendrils poking out between the overlapping muscles. Its mouth, which spread from ear to ear, was wide. It had a terrifying snarl exposing multiple rows of dagger-like teeth and a forked tongue. It had 3 crooked horns that sat up upon its head, the mismatched deformities somehow making it even more menacing. It had 2 sets of arms, one set that reached out in front of it and ended in 3 sharp claws, and the other that seemed to double as front legs that ended in a sharp foot-like dagger. But it was the creature's eyes that truly sent shivers down my spine. Multiple orbs, each one a different size, dotted its elongated head, similar to that of a spider. And even though this was just a drawing, the eyes seemed to follow me as I moved the book around. Reading the description below the image, I found what the name of the demon was. I was really into demonology and was confident I had come across the most valuable book I could ever find. At that point, I knew I had found the subject of my new story that I wanted to write about, and that this would be a breakthrough story. I thought as I slipped the book into my backpack and left the library. I could not check the book out after all. There was no tag on the book or barcode. Empty cans of Red Bull started to pile up on my desk as I wrote a tale darker than any I had ever done before. 5 hours and a half and a dozen Red Bulls later, I had written around 4,000 words and feeling great. I decided then that I would shop this story around publishers, as I could already see this story jetting off into a series of spin-offs. I had thought this was my golden ticket. I stretched my arms over my head, my back cracking with relief. I twisted it left to right in my seat. I remember glancing out the window and looking down at the streetlights that illuminated the road. I then turned toward my screen when something moved. A shadow-like figure emerged from the depths of the dark outside. It was slowly shuffling in the direction towards my house. It was a large silhouette. It looked like a large animal. What exactly, I wasn't sure. I squinted my eyes as I strained to make out details. It appeared as though the figure had antlers or something similar on its head. As the creature walked closer to the streetlight then began flickering and then, abruptly, went dark, casting the entire street in blackness. Staring out into the darkness, my heart skipped 2 beats and a shiver ran down my spine. A few seconds had passed by when the silence of the night was shattered by an ear-piercing scream. Even though my window was closed, my body automatically reacted. My hands shot straight up to cover my ears. Then suddenly, the screaming stopped, and the streetlights flickered back on. I nervously glanced back out the window. I remember breathing out the breath that I had been holding in and trying to calm myself down, thinking that the screams that I heard was most likely some wild animal, probably a wild owl, and the large animal probably got spooked when the lights cut out, causing it to run away. I checked the time, and it was already past 3 in the morning. I thought maybe I was feeling scared because I hadn't eaten anything all day. So I got up and closed my laptop. I left my room. I then headed downstairs to the kitchen to raid the fridge. I remember making a sandwich really quick, not wanting to cook a large meal. As I was shuffling around for the lettuce, the lights in the kitchen started flickering before cutting out, leaving only the light from the fridge just to illuminate the whole kitchen. I began getting scared once again, hoping that this had nothing to do with the book of the creature that I saw outside the window. I quickly opened one of the drawers next to the fridge and grabbed a small flashlight that I kept for emergency purposes. The fuse box was downstairs in the basement area, and there was no way I was going down there with no light. I turned on the flashlight, and I made my way back down the basement. I felt a cold rush of air as I swung the door open. I pointed the light down the wooden stairs to the concrete floor, revealing a narrow path leading deep into the darkness. The beam of the flashlight seemed to fade as it reached the bottom of the stairs. After descending the stairs and making it to the bottom, I spotted the mounted fuse box. As I was making my way to the fuse box, I heard a rattling noise. I quickly pointed the flashlight towards the sound that I heard, which was in between some tall shelves in the basement. That's when I caught something moving in between the shelves. I tried to aim the light at it through the shelves, but it was elusive and always seemed to evade the beam of light. I figured maybe it was nothing, or maybe I was so scared I was just imagining this. I quickly put down the flashlight and opened the fuse box. I quickly flipped a few switches, hoping to restore the lights. That's when I heard a click, and in an instant, the basement lit up. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it off. I put the flashlight in one of my pant pockets and made my way back to the stairs. But when I got to the stairs, I heard a click, and the light in the basement went out. I was engulfed in darkness once again. I fumbled around trying to pull out the flashlight that was in my pant pocket, and that's when I felt a warm breath on the back of my neck. I was petrified, frozen, unable to move in the darkness. Then I heard what sounded like a growl from right behind me. Gathering whatever courage I could muster, I quickly spun around, pointing the light at whatever was behind me, but nothing was there. Once again, I heard a noise where the shelves were, and I quickly shined the light towards the shelves. There, I saw a silhouette, huge and tall, hunched over, almost touching the ceiling with its seemingly long horns, 3 crooked ones. I turned around and bolted straight for the basement stairs. I slammed the door behind me. That's when I heard the basement stairs creaking loudly, as if it was ascending the stairs. When I heard this, I ran straight for the front door with my flashlight in my hand, lighting the way. When I reached the front door, I quickly unlocked it and swung it open. As soon as I made it outside, I slammed the front door closed. I then waited outside by the street for a friend to come and pick me up. That following morning, I went back to my house, this time not alone. I put the book in my backpack and ran out of that house. I took the book straight back to the library. I went to the librarian desk to tell her about the book and give it back to her. I then opened my backpack, and to my shock, it was not there. The book had vanished in thin air. It literally disappeared. To this day, I do not know where it's at or how it just vanished. I do know that the haunting that I experienced was the last. Nothing else paranormal occurred after that horrifying day. I wrote this true story that happened to me as a warning to not make the same mistake that I did. If you happen to come across a book with no title or doesn't look like your normal book, don't take any chances. Just leave it be. When I was about 19 years old, I went to visit my girlfriend Valerie. One night, it actually got pretty late, around 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock a.m. So that's when her parents decided to let me spend the night, but only if we promised not to lock the bedroom door, since we weren't married yet. She lived in a 2-bedroom, small, older house. There was a hallway in between both rooms with the restroom in the middle. We got ready to go to sleep, and I made my bed on the floor while Val was going to sleep in her own bed. I was laying on the floor right next to Val, with my head about a foot away from the bedroom door. After we pillow talked for about an hour, I noticed that she started to fall asleep. That's when I decided to go to sleep, and I began to slowly doze off. That's when I heard someone walking in the hallway towards the bedroom we were sleeping in. It was pitch dark in the room. They didn't have carpet in the room. Rather, it was wood panel floors, so I could hear the floor creaking. I figured it must be her parents checking to make sure we were not sleeping in the same bed together. Then the doorknob slowly turned and the door opened with a creaking noise. I kept my eyes closed, hoping that her parents would leave once they saw that I was asleep on the floor. I was surprised when the door stayed open. Whoever it was or whatever it was only inches away from my head. I was beginning to get worried and confused because whoever it was not leaving the doorway. I felt as if I was being watched. When 10 minutes passed, that's when I could no longer fake my sleep. I was beginning to truly get scared. Then something happened that I will never forget till this day. I heard a low, long growl. I could feel my heart beating through my body. The room got extremely cold at that moment. Then finally, after about 15 minutes of torture, the bedroom door slowly shut. It took me about an hour or so just to fall asleep. The following morning, I asked Valerie's parents if they checked on us the previous night, and they said they never left their bedroom. That's when I got goosebumps all over my body, and I knew it was something paranormal. To this very day, I cannot explain what happened that night, and what made that growl, and what was it doing the whole time it was standing in the doorway. Scary, true, paranormal story number 2, chased by a UFO. In 1965, me and my father were coming home from our Wednesday church service. We were driving down a long stretch of road. We were headed to our house in the country area. It was about 10 o'clock p.m. We were pretty tired and were just trying to make it home. While we were driving, I happened to look up and noticed a flickering red and yellow light in the sky. I looked harder, and that's when I noticed it was slowly moving. It was about 2 miles away or so. I showed my dad, and he gazed up at it, and we were wondering what it could be. I told him it looked like a UFO. That's when it quickly vanished. But about 5 minutes later, while we were driving on the same road, we noticed the same light flickering, but this time it was in the middle of the road. I couldn't believe my eyes what I was seeing. It was just sitting there. As we drove closer, our jaws dropped in amazement because it was clear to us that it was an actual UFO. A real UFO with the brightest lights I've ever seen, circling around the spacecraft. We were parked there in front of the UFO, not moving at all. I told my dad, what do we do? Because it was literally blocking us from getting to our house. After sitting there for a couple of minutes and not saying anything, my father did the unthinkable, something that I will never forget to this day. He slammed on the gas straight towards the UFO. The car went full throttle and drove straight towards the spacecraft that was just sitting there in the middle of the road. I thought we were going to crash and die. Just seconds before hitting the UFO, it launched up in the air and took off. I do not know why my dad did what he did. The truth is, we could have literally died that night. As we were racing home and were almost about 2 minutes away from our house, we noticed the same UFO popped up right behind us and was following us. Then it took off in front of us and left us behind. As soon as we made it home, we noticed the UFO was hovering right above our house. We were wondering, how did the UFO know that we lived there? Even though we lived in the country, there were other houses in the area. My dad told me to stay in the car. As he got out of the car, he slammed the door and ran into the house to get his gun. I was petrified as I was staring up at the UFO. While my dad was inside the house, I rolled down my window and I looked around, and that's when I saw 3 or 4 human-like creatures standing around the bushes that surrounded our house. My father came outside with his rifle and started shooting at the UFO. That's when I got out of the car and told him that there were creatures around the bushes that surrounded our house. While my father was still shooting at the UFO, it flew directly up into the air and vanished. We rushed inside and locked the doors. My father called the sheriff's department to tell them what had just happened that night. But that same night, we had to make a statement on what happened regarding the UFO. To this day, I do not know why the UFO chose to mess with us. At night, I always wonder, what if those creatures would have gotten a hold of us? Or what if the UFO would have actually attacked us? This I may never ever know. Scary True Paranormal Story number 3. The Club. This story is one of my own, and it is a very scary, true story. My dad told me this a long time ago, and this story has never left my mind, as it is one of the scariest things I have ever heard. This took place in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1950s. My dad said his dad, my grandpa, played accordion as a side job and was pretty good at it. He was outside his house playing the accordion around evening time when a man came by and introduced himself as John. He said he was in a band and played nightly at a nightclub in Corpus Christi. He said that my grandfather played really good accordion music and it sounded really nice. He wanted to know if my grandpa wanted to come out to the nightclub the following night and that he would also get paid for it. My grandfather was really excited about the job offer and agreed to it right away. The man told him to make sure he's there at 2 a.m. sharp. My grandfather found it pretty strange that he had to be there at the club so late, but he didn't ask any questions. The following night, my grandfather showed up to the dance hall exactly at 2 a.m. He was dressed really nice and had his accordion strapped around him. He said that as soon as he walked into the nightclub, he felt a strange, weird feeling as if everyone was looking at him. Everyone was dressed in suits and tuxedos. Music was playing and everyone was drinking and having a really good time dancing. He made his way to the side of the stage, and there he saw John, the man that invited him to come to the club. John saw my grandfather and walked up to him and asked him if he knew what song they were playing at the moment. My grandfather said yes, he did know the song and knew how to play it. So my grandfather got on stage and began to play his accordion. But he said about after 2 minutes of playing the song, he noticed that something didn't look right with John, the singer that was on stage at the time. He looked down at John's feet while he was singing, and to his shock and horror, John had goat feet. After seeing this, his whole body went cold. He quickly looked at the other band members and noticed that they had chicken feet. He stopped playing the accordion and looked around at the people dancing, and they all had animal feet and legs. Some people had goat feet, while others had chicken and pig feet. My grandfather was petrified. He couldn't move. Just then, he said the music stopped and everyone noticed that he knew how they looked. Everyone stopped dancing and they all stopped moving. They all looked at him with straight serious faces. That's when he jumped off the stage and ran towards the door. He said he could hear everyone laughing at him. He finally made it out of the dance hall and ran all the way straight home. When he got home, he told my grandmother everything that had happened to him. The following morning, he went back to the club with some friends to show them where all this took place, and to his surprise and horror, the doors and windows were boarded up. The place looked run down and was falling apart. My grandfather was confused. He later found out that there was a fire years prior that burned down the dance hall, taking the lives of everyone that was there that dreadful night.